Welcome back everyone to the AP Computer Science AP Test Prep tutorials. In this video, I'm going to be talking about arrays, both one-dimensional and two-dimensional. So arrays, I'm just going to start out by saying, are not primitive data types, similarly to strings. And what are arrays? Well, arrays are basically, it's a single variable, and it holds a collection of another type of data. The thing about arrays, though, is that it can only hold one type. So say you wanted to hold a bunch of values that were all ints or all strings, which I've covered in previous videos, you'd be able to do that. However, you can't mix them in an array. So I'm going to start out by showing you how you would declare and initialize an array. And if you've watched some of the earlier videos, you'll know how to do that with some other data types. So we start, let's say I wanted to have an array full of strings. So I start by typing string here. I've just created a little main method in this class here. So string, and then you put two square brackets to indicate that after the data type to indicate that you want to create an array. And then you would write the name of the variable, the name of the array. So let's say I want to write one that holds all of the days of the week. Here I'm just going to type the variable name weekdays. We could just call it that. Gets, and then see, there are multiple ways to do this here. So for the most basic way, well, I don't know, they're both pretty basic. I'm going to write the keyword new to indicate that we're initializing a new array, and these are going to be strings. So again, I'm going to type the word string, and then you want to write the number of places that you'll have in your array. So there are 7 days in the week, so I'm going to write 7 here. Close that off with a semicolon. And so now you've created, or I've created an array with 7 spots that are each a string. So what do I do to actually put stuff in there? Well, week again, I don't know what that is. All right, weekdays, and here to access one specific section of the array, I'm going to write a square bracket, and like strings, if you've watched the video on strings, the first place in an array starts with 0. So the index of this array, the indices, actually go from 0 to 6, not 1 to 7. So to access the first part, I'm going to put a 0. So that first part of the array will get, and then we'll just type a string here. So say the week starts on Sunday, we go Sunday to Saturday, right? Weekdays 0 gets Sunday. And, you could keep going. 1 would get Monday, and so on. And I'm just going to print out these two values to show you what that gives you. Line. And then here I'll type weekdays 0. And this right here should print out Sunday, because that's the first thing you have in your array, right? Sunday right there. And if you replace that with a 1, it would give you Monday. But what if you put in a 2? Because we haven't initialized that. There is no value for weekdays of 2. Well, as with the other data types, as we know, string would give you a null if you didn't initialize it, and an int that's not initialized is 0, and so on. With an array, it's also a null value. Well, it depends on what is in there. We have strings here right now, so that's null. So in this example, it's null, but yeah, it would be whatever would be in there if there's no value there. There's another way, however, to put values in an array. So say we didn't want to do this, and by the way, this number here is fixed, so you can only add values, or 7 different strings into this array. If I wanted to add an 8th one, I could not add it into this array called weekdays, because there are only 7 values in here, and that can never change unless you typed an 8 there. But later on in the program, you can't go back and do that if you're running the program. But let's say I wanted to, instead of writing this here and then putting in these lines, what if I just wanted to put it in all at once? Well, the way to do this is you write a little curly bracket and just put your values directly in. So you can write Sunday, comma, Monday, and so on, and I could write the entire week. I'm just going to do this though, so that will, I'm going to change this, that's going to print out Monday there because I put in a 1. So this string, or this array here will only have 2 values, but as you can see, that would, you could do that for as many as you want. And that also creates the length of the array that you desire. Speaking of the length of the array, as you know with strings, if you want to find the length of a string, so say the variable weekdays was a string. To find the length, you'd do weekdays.length with parentheses at the end, and that would return the length of the string. However, with arrays, there are no parentheses. It's just the word length. And this is important when you're trying to do a traversal. Traversal is when you loop through each item in an array. Maybe you want to print everything out, or maybe you're looking for something. I'm just going to add Tuesday in here so we have a little more substance for what I'm about to do next. So let's say I wanted to print out every value in this array. Well, I'm going to create just a basic for loop here. So for int I, stand for index to 0. Just gonna put that down there. So this comes in handy, the dot length part comes in handy here because we're going to go until I is less than weekdays dot length, remember without parentheses, and then we increment I each time and add another curly bracket down there. My spacing is messed up on this, but whatever. And here, this will print out, oh, and sorry, that's going to print out weekdays of I, because each time we go through it, we're going to print out the value. So on the first iteration, it'll print that because weekdays of 0, because I starts at 0, and so on until it reaches the end. So if I run this code, it'll give us Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, right there. Traversals are very important in arrays, and you'll see that they come in handy in all sorts of arrays. That brings me to the next topic I'm going to get to, which is the two-dimensional array. So this one was the the one-dimensional array. The two-dimensional array is basically an array of arrays that holds the data type that you specify. So say we wanted to create a two-dimensional array that holds integers. So we're going to start with int here instead of string. You know, it could hold strings if you wanted it to, but int, remember the square brackets, but we're also going to put in a second set of them to indicate that it's a two-dimensional array. And I'll just write the word matrix as the variable name because a matrix is, you know, what a two-dimensional array represents is basically a box with rows and columns, which is what a matrix looks like. So it's a good variable name. And I'm just going to use curly brackets to declare what's in this two-dimensional array, and then you'll be able to see other ways that you could add things in. So here, this outside curly bracket, the first one there, is going to hold everything. Then I'm going to add another one for essentially what is the first row of the two-dimensional array. And I'll just put in some integers there because this is int. So close that first row with another curly bracket, comma, and we'll add another row here, 4, 5, 6. And I'll do the last one, 7, 8, 9, just to keep things simple. So before I run this, I'm actually just going to type down here what you can visualize this matrix array as looking like. The first row is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oops, space there. So yeah, this is what you can visualize this as looking like. This is the first row, second row, and third row. So I'm just going to get rid of that. And once again, traversals are very important to know in general. So say I wanted to print out each value in this two-dimensional array. Well, I'm going to use for loops, but I'm not going to use the letter I to increment. We're going to start with the outside for loop because we're using nested loops. So I'm going to create int r starts at 0 for row. R is less than matrix dot length, and R just gets incremented every time. Now within this loop here, we're going to create another for loop. And here I'm going to use C for column because that's the second thing it's going to go through. And I'll show you how this will all relate to the array back in a second. And C starts at 0. Now here we're going to do C is less than matrix of R length. And this is because as I showed you in the one-dimensional array, you access values of that array by typing the name of it with one bracket with that index inside the bracket after it. In a two-dimensional array, and I'll just type it down here, let's say you wanted to access this number 4 right here. So to access that, it would be matrix of 1, because that's in the second row, and because it starts at 0 in programming, 1, 0, because it's the first column within that row. So if you can, I'm going to actually type what the matrix looks like down here again. It's the second row down here, second row from the bottom, and the first one from the left is where the 4 is, so 1, 0. So basically this traversal is going through the rows first and then the columns, and for each one, oops, I just realized I had put a semicolon there, and for each one of these, actually I forgot to, oh, that's why that was there, sorry. For each one of these, we're then going to just print out, I'll print out each one on a, well actually no, I'll print out each one on the same line. Matrix of R because that comes first, then C, that's the value we're printing out, and then at the end of this whole loop, I'm just gonna print a blank line so that we can start the next thing after that. And so what this should print out is, actually I'm going to put in a space there as well, just so they're not all right after each other. And this should print out the numbers 1 through 9 with spaces in between them, and then get ready to print something else on the next line. And as you can see, it did just that. So that's the basic traversal of a two-dimensional array. And back to arrays in general, just an overall, to recap, I mentioned earlier that arrays are not primitive data types like ints are and doubles. This means that a variable name of an array, like matrix was or weekdays, are simply references to the actual array. So say we had an array of ints called A, and yeah, and A had, I don't know, the numbers 2 and 3 in it. If I created another array called B, I could not assign that A. Well, I could, but then then B would just be a reference to A. So if you changed A, B would change as well. Instead, what you'd have to do is create a traversal to loop through the values of A and one by one assign them to B. That's basically the main way to get around doing that. If you wanted to copy all the values over from an array to another array, but then be able to change it later, you'd have to do that. So these are the basics of the array that you'll need to know for the AP test. And as always, there are a couple other more in-depth topics that might be helpful, but you know, those can be covered at another time. These are just the basics. All right, thanks everyone for watching, and as always, hope you watch some of our other videos if you need help. See you around.